All right. Welcome, everybody, to, I believe, the second panel of Filmocracy. If you were here, I did the first one earlier on development and packaging. And the second one, we have some incredibly talented friends of mine who are all in the representation business out here and across the world, actually. And we're lucky to have them. So I'm going to welcome onto the stage. Give me a second to figure out technology.
Hello, Jasper.
Hello, Jason. Hello, Carmen. Hello, Lee. Hello, Zach.
Hello.
Thank you guys so much for being here today. Very brief. I mean, I'm actually just going to have you guys introduce yourselves at this point. Okay. So let's start with Carmen. Why don't we go for you? Everybody here is an independent manager and producer. Tell us a little bit more about your background.
Yeah. So good morning, everyone. I'm in from Melbourne this morning at 6:40 a.m. and typically work on Pacific Standard Time because I'm an independent manager like the rest of the guys and have clients between Australia, the US and Canada, which is fun for my sleeping clock and hours. I have a background in development, so I most recently worked at an independent studio as a creative executive and worked in the YA space in short and long form, and made a pretty natural transition to management, as I started to realize I was more interested in working with writers overall than just the projects at hand. So it's been fun since. And then the rest of the guys here are similarly all independent managers. I'll hand it over to Jason.
Jason?
Kind of similar background, not in Australia, here in LA. I started my career at Lionsgate, was there for a number of years, did a little bit of everything there, worked in TV, worked for the CEO, was his assistant, and then was in the movie team before I left and was head of development for Linda Opes. We had a first look deal at Sony Television, and then started my own company, First Story Entertainment, 2 years ago now. Work with primarily writers. I have a couple directors, film, TV, all genres, and just excited about kind of moving their careers forward, kind of launching projects, getting them hired on staffs on shows, and just finding opportunities in all capacities for them to work in the entertainment business.
Awesome. Lee, would you like to kick us off next?
I'm Lee Stoby. I've been a manager for 8.5 years now. I worked at a various company. I've been working at Hollywood for about 11 years. Got here in 2009, and I've wanted to work in movies since I was like 14. I was watching Lord of the Rings. I was 20 minutes into it. I had a very vivid memory of this is what I'm going to do. This is what I was going to do. I decided at that moment that's what I was going to do, and here I am. I love movies. I love development. I've had my own company for about 6 years, and I think what do people want? Background? It's like
that's good.
It's fun. It's fun. I feel like I have a really great passion. I think I work from really loving what I do and my clients and their projects, and just fighting to get beautiful pieces of art out in the world.
Amazing. Zach, next. Can you guys hear Zach?
What's that?
Back.
Zach, you broke up for a second. Start over.
Zach? Okay. All right. So I'm Zach. Thank you, Jasper. My company is All Trades. Before I was in LA, I worked in production. I worked on The Wire, on Transformers, on anything that kind of came around the Baltimore, DC area. I moved out here. I worked for Jerry Bruckheimer TV for some years, transitioned into development. I worked with Steve D'Souza, who wrote Die Hard, Commando, and 48 Hours. We sold for TV, film, digital. I worked with him and his manager, Alan Gasmer. Watching what Alan was doing, I realized, you're producing and managing. And I'm like, that looks really cool. I like that thing. Alan showed me the ropes. I transitioned to a boutique company for a bit. Realized I'd love to start doing this on my own terms. I definitely think with creative forward, creative first. So writers, directors, IP, on the management side, and then producing side, film, TV, cookbooks, I don't know, anything. We're building Jasper and I are cooking anything. Jasper and I are building a Death Star.
I believe that.
It's all things.
Yeah. Very cool. The Death Star is secret, and we were not supposed to talk about that one today. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Great. Well, as everybody here in the audience knows and everybody on the panel knows, this panel is about not about management. No, I'm just kidding. It's obviously about management and representation. It's about cooking books. So everybody get your chef's hat out. And in all seriousness, I think there's a huge amount of myths, legends, not just in the industry, but about representation and management versus agents and managements and producers and all of this different kind of stuff. And people think that there's this one key to unlocking their career. And I think a lot of times they think that the first step is representation. Personally, I don't know if that's correct, but I think we're going to dig into kind of some of these questions over the next 40 minutes, and then we'll leave.
Anti-managers saying that you don't need managers on a manager panel.
Well, obviously you need manager.
Fine.
No, but we'll leave about 10 minutes at the end, for some Q&A. So if anybody has questions in the audience, you can just go over to the right side of your browser, click on the Q&A, put a question in there, and we'll try to get to it up at the end. So I think, Lee and Zach started getting into it a little bit in terms of the why somebody's a manager. I'd love to, especially with a lot of you coming from executive backgrounds, go like, why management? And we can just start with Carmen again. And, guys, you can wax poetic. Obviously it's a poetic question, but don't spend more than a couple minutes is what I would advise.
Yeah, I think I just was touching on it really briefly there before. For me, why management? It was a decision that came, or at least I arrived in a number of instances where I was working together with writers on an independent project and would get partway through the process and realize that I was actually inspired by the writer at large, so the person themselves that I was working with, and felt compelled to be further involved and to leverage my relationships and my know-how to not only further the interests of the project, but also the individual. And so I thought, why am I sort of doing all this, additional, it doesn't even feel like work. I think most of you could relate, but sort of looked adjacent to myself and saw that there were all these other managers quite doing this, but within the box of a role or a job title. And I thought that's actually what I'm doing anyway. So development can parlay quite naturally into management, and it's a style of management can be that your manager is really your personal development executive. I think there's a spectrum of managers, and I'm sure we'll get into that, Jasper, in terms of how exactly it's defined. There's no one industry standard, but some do fall on that end of the spectrum where you're breaking story with a writer, and you're shepherding everything from that, hatching that first idea through to all the materials you should be bringing into a particular pitch. Like, it's just for me, it felt more of a natural fit. It's a personality thing too. Yeah, totally.
Jason, do you have a follow up on that one?
I think for me, I kind of fell into it a little bit. I since college, I kind of wanted to be a producer, and that was kind of where I was headed. And, I did the exec track, kind of had some different opportunities, and it came to a point where I was leaving a job and kind of looking for what's next. And I had a lot of friends who were managers, kind of in a very similar style of, people had been execs and become managers, and they all loved it and kind of started exploring it and found the opportunity. I think just the evolving business has really made being a manager a really exciting thing right now. I think the thing that I really like about it is I'm investing in people rather than on individual projects. And I think from, you know, just based on the number of buyers right now, how important IP is, you know, this kind of showrunner centric TV business that's become so huge in entertainment right now. You know, I get to invest in these people where it's like, you know, I don't, yes, I want people, my clients to sell their material. And I always hope that we can get the sale, but I care a lot more that someone reads my client and is like, I want to work with this person. How do I make that happen? And I don't care as much what that looks like because you know, it aligns my interest with my client's interest, which is moving their career forward in whatever capacity we feel is best for them. And whether that's adapting a book, whether that's getting hired on a show, whether that's, you know, collaborating with someone else on something new or selling the material that we've developed over the course of time. You know, all of that, I think there are good opportunities to push their careers forward rather than as a independent producer where it's like, this project's got to sell. And that's really the only way I'm compensated is if the movie goes, rather than kind of working with the writer on finding the right opportunities for them.
Totally. Yeah, I think that's really well said. Lee, would you like to share with us?
Like, I would say it's kind of romantic. It's actually like the whole idea of like kind of going back to like when I was 14, it's like, I also had this idea that I wanted to be Paul Thomas Anderson's dude. Whatever that means. Like that I'm a dude. Right? That like, that if a person needs to do a thing, doesn't matter, gotta talk to the dude. And I'm the dude. Like that there is a like really like intimate, like I am bodyguard, therapist, like in everything. Like that I am like holding the entire, you know, allowing the writer or the director to like do their job, which is write a screenplay or direct a movie, and being able to kind of take everything else off the table, right? And handle all of, like, manage all of those things. So it becomes a very symbiotic relationship where it's like they were, you know, writers, you know, like it's a complicated emotional thing. So like being able to kind of navigate a lot of it's just like talking people off ledges or this or like or inspiring people, like or giving them pep talks. Like it feels like a lot of it is just like being in the soup with the clients and creating something because of that and feeling that they're protected, right? And that like I'm the person to protect them, right? In some and you know or like or both ways, right? It's like or you do this thing or tag teaming and thinking about things in a very, you know, there's an actual team, right? Like a real team. Like so even if there's agents, to my sense, it's like at least how I do my business. Like even if there's agent, that's like there's no way any agent is going to have anywhere near as intense a relationship with a writer. Like my big writers, I'll talk to them for 2 hours a day. Like I'm talking to them all day long about everything they're doing. Like I know what most of them are doing at any moment. I know where they are. I know what they're doing. Right? It's like because that's how like ingrained I am in their daily lives, right? And like what they're doing because I'm managing literally every aspect of it. So I think there's something like really like I think that's also because I just love movies and like to be so kind of close to the creative process. Like even I think in some ways I'm closer than most producers are to the actual like at least I'm writing screenplays because I have such an intimate relationship with my writers. It's like I know what the mechanics of actually is happening way more than anyone outside of it. So I think that's like to me that's also what's very fun about it is like I love, you know, making movies and TV and stuff. So it's like having this kind of view into it that's so close. And that's really honestly why I was drawn into it. Like I wanted to be an executive. Like, but I was realizing working in Hollywood my early days, like, man, but the manager is kind of like the boss. Like the producers need the manager to do stuff. Like the producers are calling the manager to be like, your writer, your client needs to do this, and that, and the other, because they understand that they can ask the person to do that, but the manager is the person that's actually going to make sure it gets done, right? Actually gets done because that's they're holding the torch for this thing. So that's like, you know, that's what I would say. So.
Totally. Zach, what about you? What's your why?
My why, I actually resisted being a manager for the 10 years that people told me I should be a manager. It's not what I saw for myself. It's not what I wanted to do. the moment I watched someone else doing it and I actually understood what that was. And the idea that the person I was watching do this thing was making management be whatever he wanted it to be, which was working with people he wanted to work with that he respected, which was producing projects that he wanted to produce, which was kind of like building his own Death Star, you know, again, Death Star reference. To me, there's something creative about the process of building a company with creatives in creative ways, being involved with the process of, you know, working on material. May work, this maybe doesn't. Also, I mean, I'm sure you guys, you know, some of you who know, some of you don't, you know, it's kind of like being a DJ. You mix and match different clients, different projects, different things. You're not necessarily creating the music, but you are, you know, playing to the audience. And when you get a sense for what people are buying, what people are seeing, what's out there, which voices are going to rise above the others, there's something fun about making the call and saying, I have something great. You got to read this. And then them saying, oh, damn, that really was. So I like it. At the end of the day, I really like it.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I think that it's interesting. Like, we already kind of started jumping into the next question, which was, you know, like, there's obviously, even from hearing everybody talk, such a broad spectrum of what it means to be a representative. You know, you know, it's funny, but before touching on that, I wanted to share a personal story because I also am a representative, of course. But Zach, I also resisted being a representative because, you know, I didn't want to deal with people. And that's what I always said. I was like, I do not want to deal with your problems. I will deal with the project's problems. And then a bunch of people were like, no, you're my dude, as Lee would say. And I was like, oh, all right, I guess we do talk quite a bit. I guess we're fine, you know. I think for me, there was definitely that fear factor of like, oh my God, what does it mean? And it's, you know, it's always nebulous. I don't know if there's a point where it becomes not nebulous, no matter what company you are, independent or otherwise. I think that it is kind of we're Swiss Army knives of a sort. You know, whatever needs to get done, we pretty much do, even if it's not allowed. Technically, you know, I think to that extent, you know, Lee, I kind of would like you to kick off this one because you started bringing up agents and stuff like that and the boss. Your perspective on the different types of managers that there are. And everybody can kind of at this point popcorn in.
Sure.
But I'll let Lee kick this one off.
Well, I think that's part of it. I think, well, as I'm also kind of like maturing into my career, I think part of it's like I think it's important for me that I have my own identity as well, right? And that's part of it. Like, this is a symbiotic relationship, but it's like there is this push and pull, and that it isn't like I am not a good fit for the type of people that just want someone. Hey, the writer or the director has an idea, and they need someone to just click the buttons for them. That I'm not the right person for that kind of a person, right? And there's certain, again, like, and that works for some people, right? I feel like I want to have a little bit more ownership and involvement, and like, if it's like, that's also like, I understand like that's benefited my clients because me pouring myself and my own passion into something and having some real ownership of things. When you're on the phone and someone's streaming at you because you're not giving them something or you're whatever, to have some skin in the game a little bit helps both the writer and I to feel like I have like, no, fuck you, this is my thing too, right? Like, to like, you know, have that kind of protection there too. So I think like I like that kind of relationship with the clients, right? So it's like there's like we're kind of in it together, right? Like, versus, you know, and also at the same time, like, I do television, but like I don't really focus as much on staffing, right? I kind of have like a more, you know, streamlined list of writers, and like I tend to do more features than television because that's just what I like. Again, like what Zach was like, I just like features more, so I just do them more. Like, I don't think about it from like, oh, what's better business? I'm like, it's better business for me because I like it more. Like, that's how I think that's better business, because I only have X amount of time in the day, so I want to spend it on the things that I find the most compelling, right? So I think that's at least how I. So I did try to, and I work the best with people that kind of fit into that mold and benefit the best from that kind of a relationship with someone.
Totally. Who wants to go next? Different types of managers, and where do you kind of fit in?
Yeah, I think just to some point, I kind of somewhat alluding to kind of what Lee's talking about. I mean, for me, I think a manager, or at least how I approach being a manager, is I do whatever's necessary for my clients to move their careers forward. And I've never, I mean, maybe it's part of like never having been a rep before and never working really for anyone who's been a rep before. I have no clue what I'm doing half the time. And I think it ends up working out for me because I don't have a preconceived notion of what a manager is, what an agent's supposed to do. I just do what makes sense to me to get a client hired, to get a project going. And sometimes, like, I was talking to an agent about something about structuring a deal a certain way, or kind of doing some interesting work in order to get a client like what she needed in order to move something forward. And he was like, I love the way your mind thinks, because it's not like, oh, this is the way it's supposed to go. I was like, this is what we want. This is what they want. How do we align those things? And so I think for me, that just always has worked. And kind of the question kind of like what to look for in a manager. And I think kind of what Lee's talking about is you find the person that works for you, you find what it is. Like, there are some people I meet with that want someone who's like, I have these projects, I need to get them sold. And like, there are some managers that do that really well. And then there's others who that's not the way they do it. They want to be very involved, and they're like, okay, but like, how are we working things? What's the overall strategy? And kind of looking at things a little more holistically. So I think it kind of, I think a lot of, and that's because like managers, right? There's no licensing, there's no things. It's just people kind of do, again, what they feel they need to do that works for them and works for their clients.
Totally.
It's interesting, Jace, because I would say for the most part, I mean, 70% possibly of the clients I work with would fall within that same category. But then there are some writers that I have come across where that covering agent role almost, so that less personal management style where you really are just taking the materials to the market, I've actually found by sort of incident I've fallen into that dynamic with a writer just because they're so supremely positioned for that, and the dynamics just lent itself. And it's almost surprised me because, again, I think personality wise I lean into the style that you're both referring to, but I've just found there can be a sort of a writer that comes up out of the blue, and it's caused me to actually change my dynamic because it's just worked that one unique instance. So it's almost like it's a fluid thing. But across both, you're always the eyes and the ears, I think, for that person in the industry, no matter how it manifests,
Yeah, absolutely. Zach?
Yeah. So, first experiences in management was working for a company where the managers at this company were all agents prior to becoming a manager. And my process coming from development and being more creative first and creative driven was, very different. I think they were more about volume, and it was not a sniper approach. It was more of a shot to more the better, the deal, this. And that's okay for some people. I think my philosophies and my ideas of where I wanted to put my focus landed more on the most quality product I could find. What I really believed when I played that song, that was going to hit hard. And that still rings true. And, I think what's beautiful about the management landscape right now is there is so much variety. I mean, even on this panel, there's so much variety on on the right fit, on the right home, on the right person. And the other great thing, I mean, again, a lot of us here know this, is we like working with each other. So sometimes we use each other as a bridge, and we're able to help connect the pieces together, which is something I think is very new in Hollywood that is pretty profound in an industry that's been very dog eat dog world.
I love that. I think that the redefining role of a manager is really, really interesting and inspiring. I think that's, kind of leads into like the question of like, what is the difference between a manager and an agent? People know that they need both of these types of folks on their teams. But I think that there's a confusion. I think that there's more confusion recently as well with the WGATA stuff going on. Does anybody want to kind of offer what an agent does versus what a manager does?
I think just put simply and conceptually, it still rings true that an agent is typically attracted to a more established reputation, whereas a manager is always going to identify and really break talent and bring talent to the marketplace. It's obvious it's more complex, but to distill it in my mind, I think that still stands. But then to drill down on the nuances, obviously technically and legally we operate differently. But just conceptually, that's sort of where it still sits, I think.
I agree with that. I think that's I think that's the fundament. Fundamentally, it's the same job, but that's the kind of like, it's that emotional difference of it's like, you could have like, it'd be very odd for like a very fancy agent to go find someone and sign someone that's never made any money. That'd be very hard. Whereas like, that wouldn't be as weird for a manager. Like you could be the biggest manager and like still get excited about some new person and find some passion in it. Like that, that to me feels like a good kind of way to think about it. Because again, because that intimate relationship, right? There's a more like, so it's like you're getting excited more about the whole, like the journey that you're about to go on with the writer versus it being more transactional, more kind of like immediate business to be had, right? So like to me, so I think to me with why I've kind of adopted this is like, that's how I kind of work best with agents that also adopt that. Like I allow the agents to be agents. The agents, they love to sell things. They love to go out with things. They love to do that. And I'm like, great. Right. If they're excited, I kind of let them, again, I'm supportive and helpful, but like, if you have a big client at CA, it's like CA going off the project, I could act like I can do a better job, but it's just, it's like, they can do a better job. They call the heads of the studios, they call them like, there's a like a level of like of just power, right? That comes with that. But at the same time, I'm the one that did 12 drafts of the script before the agent even read it. Strategize with the agent, with this producer, like I'm planning, right? It's like I'm like if the agent is the general, I'm like the what's it called? Like not the like the admiral, right? Like I'm like I don't go out into the field.
Yeah.
I'm strategizing and then I'm sending out the agent, like, go fight them, right? It's like that's then they go and fight the actual like hand-to-hand combat battle because they like that more, because they like the intensity of it more. I want to kind of keep myself a little bit more closer to the client, right? While that's kind of transpiring, right? And kind of being the more kind of the mom, I guess, if the dad is off hunting the meat. That makes sense.
No, totally. I don't know anything about sports, but it's either the coach of the team, and the agents are like some of the, I don't know, forward members or something. Again, the sports analogies are kind of lost on me, but the other way of looking at it is that the manager is the QB, kind of like calling the shots and stuff like that. And then, everybody else, including the talent, is kind of going along with that plan, is the way that I kind of phrase it as well. Zach,
really quick anecdote. I think it's funny. Like say like a negotiation is getting contentious. I think there's an executive will call me to like the lawyer's being difficult or the agent's being difficult, and then they call me and I snap their head off. And I'm like, you think that those people are being difficult because I'm not telling them to do that? What do you want from me? Like, I'm not going to be I'm not going to go in this in a break and be like, no, like, you're not going to, there's no soft spot here. I'm the hardest surface you're going to find. Go deal with the lawyer. Right. And then they're like, and then they go and they go with their tail back. It's like, that's like, yeah, that's the thing. It's like, I'm like, don't bother me. I'm hanging out in the cave. Like, if you're bothering me, there's no deal with that's
Nah.
where they're there, right?
Zach, do you got to take on this?
Yeah, I think the same way managers are different. I think it depends on the agent and the agency you go to. I mean, clearly, as I totally agree with Lee, as you know, CAA is going to operate how CAA operates, and once they're engaged, you want to step back and let them do their process. But as far as other agencies, I think I deal with Gersh. I think I deal with A3, UTA here and there. It all depends. I mean, it depends. It's. I guess the question is, what's the difference? I would say it depends on the relationship and the team. I think certain managed or agencies will have resources, whether it's talent, other attachments, whether they rep a company or financing. They'll also, if staffing is the goal, they'll usually have all of the grids, and they'll be able to, really attack staffing in a very different way. I think choosing an agent and an agency and what their roles are and how they operate depends on the strategy for whatever the project that you're either taking out or the client. As far as exactly what the differences are, there's a lot of crossover. There's no doubt. I've worked with agents who I feel could be great managers. I've worked with agents who like to be good managers because maybe they would prefer to be more involved with the creative process. I do know that as far as, and again, agreeing with everything Lee said, being able to work directly with the writer to get it to a place where, okay, the agent can now do his job concurrently with what we're doing. Well, we'll send it out. We'll make the list as well. If we're taking it out to 10 places, 15, 20, we'll do 5, 10, 15,
Sometimes. Yeah.
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 It depends.
I think it's interesting. It's just that there is like so much crossover. And I think that you really have to, for folks that haven't had managers or agents, the question isn't really which one first. I think in all likelihood, you're going to be able to entice, as Lee was, as everybody's been saying, but like a manager probably first, because we work from a place of, hey, are you a cool person? Hey, is there some growth here that we can kind of see? Can, we like kind of, in a way, I think it is very producerial, but it's producerial of the person, not necessarily just the project. I think I think there's a couple things that would stem from this, but I think the next one is probably organically, when is somebody right for a manager? If we're saying that managers are the first block of defense for representation and kind of furthering one's career and being taken seriously, how do you find the right coach? If you were to peel yourself out from being the rep and go like, okay, let's backwards engineer this. What is smart? Is it cold queries? Is it direct queries? Is it reaching out through a friend? I mean, all of these are good ideas, but like, I will let you guys say them.
Jasper,
anybody?
Yeah, I actually have. I spoke about this last night with someone, and I would think about what resources you have for a manager to work with. I think at the end of the day, it's not saying I'm a brilliant writer or a brilliant. I mean, look, I could be wrong about this. I'm not a brilliant writer or a brilliant director. Somebody needs to recognize me, and then I've made it. I think that's something you hit on earlier, where if only I had a manager, I'd be great. Well, as soon as you have a manager, as soon as I get this thing optioned, as soon as I get this thing made, or as soon as I get, or even we get to network, there's always and then once all of this happens, once I get this other thing. Honestly, you're ready for a manager when you feel like, your material is capable of getting out there, but also there's enough that you have as far as your experience goes, that when I pick up the phone and say, hey, here's who I'm selling to you, this is the reason you have to see this person, and here's what he's working on or she's working on, that has to be fucking great. Or else you're just going to be one of everyone else who's represented by a manager. Totally. So I don't know.
Totally.
Yeah, I think that the when is it the right time for the man? It's a really hard question to answer. And I'm sure it's just as hard for writers to really think about. I think the thing where people make the mistake is they think it's like, you know, that's like it's kind of like a promotion, right? It's
Right.
rather than saying like, oh, I've done all this work, so therefore I should be promoted, or I've done this good writing, therefore now I should get a manager. It's getting promoted is about proving that you are ready to perform at the next level, and now you move up into that. And I think a manager should be approaching kind of a similar way. It's not like, oh, once I get a manager, then I'll be like ready to now be in Hollywood. It's no, you are ready to be in Hollywood, and having a manager just becomes one of those tools in your toolbox to continue to reach out and elevate and move your career forward. And so I think, because like people always like, how many scripts do I need, or like what should be in my portfolio? And I was like, there's no right answer. It's more about, is your writing at a certain level, or do you have the right experience, or you've shot the right number of shorts, or now you're ready to shoot that feature. You should be shooting a feature, and you just need that additional partner in order to help kind of manage that process and get things going. I think that's more the approach, rather than, oh, now I want to work in Hollywood. Step one is get a manager, and I think that's the wrong approach that people sometimes kind of make.
Totally. Carmen Lee.
The question-
Lee, you go. I saw you lean forward.
You go first.
I was just going to say, look, I agree. I think it's non-linear. I don't think there's one, unfortunately, trajectory or one sort of entry point to the industry, and B, to generating enough heat that a manager is going to be interested or take interest. I think it's coming from all angles. It's having a great understanding of yourself and what it is that you're writing about and what place you're coming from. I think the strongest thing that attracts me to a writer is their background, and not for how colorful that necessarily is, but the extent to which the material draws upon that, how interesting that is, how it is I'm positioning that person and packaging them, essentially. So it's deeply intuitive. So it's sort of a catch-22 in that there's no prescriptive answer, which is why we're all sort of saying the same thing in different ways. But I do think the onus on the emerging writer from the get-go is to hone the material and have a bank of material that you're working with. It's not useful to have a script that performs well and does well in contests, say, as just one mechanism without a follow-up. When you start, when that interest starts to flow in, you need to be able to have scripts 2 and 3 to follow up with. You need to sort of understand the position you're coming from philosophically. So
Totally.
Yeah, I think it's all the above. But I think, to go one step further, I think when do you know you need a manager that's like you have to approach everything at the same time? I feel like early on in my career, I wasted a lot of time trying to get all my clients agents, for example. And I realized, again, I think this applies to writers too. It's like, if you are only focused on getting yourself a manager, you're doing it the wrong way. Like, you are leaving money on the table, because what you should be trying to do is get yourself a job. That is what you try to do, because that's all the manager's going to try to do. So try to get yourself a job, and then you know what? If you get yourself a job, you'll find a manager. Like that, I think it's always like since I was like, I need to get agents so they get my clients jobs, and I'm like, no, I'm going to get my clients jobs.
Totally.
I'm just going to do the work, and I feel like most of the agents that I've kind of found for my clients, like, sure, I've referred to, but honestly, it kind of ends up being like, they see that I've built a really beautiful bonfire that is like amazing, and then the agent's like, what's this over here? This is warm.
Yeah.
Right? And then they come, hey, what's going on over here? I'm like, oh, you want to come? Like, I feel like that's how I've found more agents that, like, because I'm just doing my job. I'm just doing the job, right? I'm not gonna get I can't get distracted by what anyone else is thinking. Like, I just have to do the job, right? So if you are a writer, write screenplays, write another one. People don't like that one, do another one, do another one, do another one. Send it to people, submit them to contests. Have your friends send them around. Like, and then also have a clear viewpoint. Like, I get a bunch of query letters, and like generic query letters are just like get sent to 1 million people. Those are easy to delete. If it's like, Dear Lee, I love your client's movie, The Tribe. It's one of my favorite movies. I think you're a really interesting person. Da da da. Well, I've already read that far, right? Like, that's going to suck me in.
Totally.
I'm going to accidentally read that email versus like someone has an idea of where they like what kind of person they want and what kind of things they like. Is able to identify that. Feels like, again, which is what I have to do, right? If I have a screen, like, okay, what do I do? Who do I call? Who would like this? Who wouldn't like this? Who would I not call? It's like, so just being able to think about that yourself as a writer. I feel like, oh, it's just going to benefit a manager too if you have like a vision for yourself, right? And for like allowing someone else to like make a vision for you, right?
Totally. Yeah, I love that analogy of the bonfire. I think that that's totally true. It's like build something, but what is it? Build it and they will come, right? I mean, it's like classic, but I think that it's also what you talked about is interesting, and we don't have to spend too long on this, but because I think we want to get to Q&As in a minute, but I love the idea of like, how does somebody write a query letter, right? Like, should we write query letters? I think the answer is yes. Like, a lot of people find people through those query letters that we largely discard. So you have to get a lot of people. But I think, Lee, to your point of tailoring it, I think that that's really important. I think it speaks to what everybody's been saying.
If I'm emailing someone I don't know, if I'm emailing someone, like I'm emailing some crazy big producer, I'm like, hi, Emily. Like, I can't just be like, hey, you want to read my shit? I don't know that person. Right. That person's going to delete my email too. It's like, I have to like just think how this is how I have to do it. So like, at the very least, that person, if I send like, hey, I met you at this thing, like whatever, you have to like craft something that's gonna then make them, they have to then respond back to me.
Yeah.
Right? Because I've made it, I'm not gonna like just let this one go. Where they have like you have to invite people in to the party. Yeah. Right? Invite people to the party. Right?
I think it's about creating that relationship. I think that that's the other thing that managers are good at is relationships. And it's like, if anybody has ever heard about Hollywood, it's all relationships. And I think that that's something that like we create friendships most of the time, not just with executives and our talent and stuff like that, but with also each other. And I think that this is, if you saw a panel of agents, I think it would be a completely different tone. I don't think there would be the camaraderie of each other. They'd be like, what agent is on the board? I'm not coming on that panel. Like, it's very much that in tonally difference, well, very quickly. Then we'll get to some of the questions, and I want to be respectful of everybody's time on the panel. Who is the client, or what was the first client where you were like, damn, this is what I've got to do? Like, I think that there's, a lot of us have that first one where you're like, I don't know how to do this, but we're going to figure it out because this person's voice needs to be told or something like that. And what kind of was unique about that situation, or where you were in that as well? And, it's a poetic question, but again, like, maybe try and keep it to a minute or two.
I'll jump in. So this was an Australian series creator who I had actually met in Los Angeles a number of years ago, who came across on a federal government funded trip. Screen Australia will often send a group of writers over to meet people in LA. And I was still at independent studio Insurrection Media at the time, and got chatting to this writer, and we years later started to work together on an independent TV project, looking to set that up together in the US when I returned here. And I realized in shaping that project and in working together, this talent is prodigal, he's incredible. And not only was I just moved working on the project itself, but in his process, I realized there was no sort of compatibility between what he was doing and where he was at the time of creation, and being able to market that and position that to people in the industry. It's like that there needed to be one of us in the process, needed to be that conduit. And it felt like a crime to not play that role. But it also felt that I was overstepping the role of being the producer attached, because I think you mentioned before, Lee, it's like you really are, you're a therapist in it sometimes in ways. You're counseling through situations, and it's a torturous industry at times. And so in that role I started to play, I just felt like naturally it lent to the circumstances, but it moved it forward. And it was thrilling. And that's when I thought, okay, this is where I sit in this equation, and it's, you know, it's nourishing. It's nourishing for the project. It makes sense. And yeah, just liberating for the both of us. And so I think, again, it's something that just happened organically. And it's been healthy for the project. It's caused it to get set up. And so I've just sort of repeated that since.
All that.
I think Jason was saying this, where like about just getting people read. I feel like really early on, like I signed this woman named Katri Fry, and I thought she had like this cool indie dark comedy, and I was like, I loved it. I was like, but I don't really know what to do with it, and like, but I started sending it to people, and like people were trying. Then she'd have meetings, and she'd have 4-hour meetings. Like executives like reschedule their afternoon and being like, Lee, this was the best meeting. Like she's just like the best meeting. And then I was like, oh. So I start calling people like, hey, read the screenplay, but you want a great meeting? Like, that becomes like, I realize, again, I'm like listening to what the feedback is. And the feedback is that people love her screenplay, but the real selling point is, do you want to have the best meeting you're going to have all year? Right? And that becomes my pitch for her. And then from it, even though she was a feature, I started sending her to television places and this. And even though she'd never worked in television, I got her staffed on Stranger Things because of that.
Right.
Because she's so great in the room, and I introduced her to everybody, and everyone loved her. Then the producers and everyone involved was just so that it was osmosis, right? I didn't get her staffed on Stranger Things. I just introduced her to every single person involved, and they all loved her. So they just put her on the list, and they sent her to the Duffers. The Duffers were like, bring her in. So it's like that. Like that's like the magic of Hollywood to me. Where it's like I'm just responding to what people, and they're like, okay, give them more. Feed the beast. I think they want great meetings. They love meeting with her. Meet her, right? Like I was just kind of giving people what they wanted, and then it flourished, right? And then it's like the underwear gnomes, right? It's like profit. I don't know, like set meetings, and all of a sudden, like, oh my god, now she has an overall deal at Netflix. It's like I don't know, like it happened through just her being great at her job, like being great at herself, and me allowing her to just present her in front of people and letting her. So I think that was like, it was also first script I got on the blacklist. Was like, okay, I can do this. Like, okay, this works. Like, there's a system here, right? She got staffed like a few years later, but like it was a It's like, okay, she will make money eventually. People are so obsessed with her, it will figure itself out, right?
Yeah,
it was gonna work out, right?
Totally. Zach, Jason, you got a story to share?
Yeah, it's. I think I would say probably the moment that I really was like, all right, I'm doing this. My first client that I signed, because I left this job, I signed her, probably within a month or so of starting this out, and sat down. I was like, what is the 1-year goal? What are we trying to accomplish? And she was like, I want to get an agent and I want to get staffed. And I was like, all right, that's the goal. That's what we're doing. And we're off. And pretty much I got her an agent that following spring, probably like 4 or 5 months in. And then probably right around 1 year into our time working together, got her staffed on 1 day at a time. And that was like the moment I was like, okay, I actually can do this. I'm not full of shit that I've been selling people for the last year. And that really kind of, I think, so like there was that element to it, but then there was also seeing how excited she was at accomplishing what she had set out to do, and really feeling like I was so instrumental in terms of that part of her career and really moving forward, and how grateful she was for making that happen. And I think that's the thing that reps get to do. Like, sure, we want to make our clients money and do that, but we're also not changing life, but like we are kind of really helping, especially at these younger emerging creators getting to be very instrumental at the beginning of their careers. And that was something that I don't feel I had really experienced as an executive previously, because it was always chasing the showrunner or chasing the big director. And so I think that's one of the things that is really exciting about this, and really feeling like you're really playing a very instrumental role.
I love that. I really love that. Zach, you got a story you'd like to share?
Yeah. So, when I first really started considering being like, I was still wanted to produce, be a development executive, super sure, this client, was passed by everyone at this company for this script about Raoul Wallenberg. And just something stuck to me. I don't know what it was, but it was this gut feeling. And I said, let me read it. Let me take a look. I was really resistant because of the pitch material. It was not great, but something just rang true. Read the script, or just read the first.
Damn, this sounds like it's going to be a really good story. Wait, Zach. You have to rewind. Like, Zach, you there?
Yeah. I'm here. Rewind.
You got to rewind. I've got to read the at least first 2 pages, and I'm pretty sure the next line is it. And if it is shit, I'll throw it away. But I'm gonna let you say it again.
It was shit. It just would have been. I would have known, and I wouldn't have given it another shot. But I got through the entire miniseries. This guy wrote the entire miniseries for this thing, and I got through the first episode right there, and I was in tears at my desk, and I was very emotional. And everyone at this company was like, oh, it's period, it's limited, nobody wants to see this get done. And I was like, I don't care, this is amazing. Like, good material is going to sell, people are going to want to do this. And they're like, all right, fine, waste your time. I had 3 offers in within 2 months or something like that. And it was, this first thing this guy was doing, it was such a surreal. We had Apple all of a sudden touching in, like, wait a second, what do you have over here? This is really when they first started to really get interested in content. And that was like my first moment of, my gut told me this was good. Everyone told me based on logic, no, it's not going to work. But my gut was right. And that was it. At that point, I was like, follow my gut. Totally. And that's been everything after that. I like this, I'm going to give it a shot. I don't have a rhyme or reason. I'm not like, I only do genre, or I only do Holocaust stuff, or period, or whatever. I'm like, man, whatever that is, I want to take that out. And
totally. Yeah.
I just do Holocaust content.
I did. Yeah, I definitely have worked on quite a few Holocaust projects, but no, I think that's great and beautiful. My story is like kind of totally the same. Like, I would share that there's, there was 2 different versions of this client. It was the first person to go like, hey, can you be my rep? And then the first person where I was like, oh, I have to be this person's rep. And, we're both very similar, kind of like going, this person for absolutely no reason should get paid right now. Like, there's no rhyme or reason for like any of this material to go forward, but this person and their story and how I relate to them and their energy that they bring with it and their mindset and growth and stuff like that. I'm like, you want me to have your back, I'll have your back. And, and then the first client that I was like, I need to sign, she walked into the room and I'd read 2 samples of hers, and one was a Holocaust story. And the other one was a Victorian age bloodletting story set in Barbados. And I was like, what kind of a person is this going to be when I walk into the room? And I looked in the coffee shop and I was like, none of these folk are the people that would read to me as. And, she presents as a type, woman from the valley and stuff like that. And I was like, okay, well, why do you write these stories? And she was like, I just write what I'm passionate about. And I was like, killing Nazis and bloodletting? And she was like, absolutely. And it wasn't a joke. And I was like, well, I mean, I have I have to work with you, like, and we ended up selling her pilot like the next month, and it was really the first project of mine that I sold, and I was just like, there is something to just being a fan. Like, I've got, like, we all have the posters of clients and stuff like that, and it goes beyond just being a friend. It's like a consigliere or something. It really is that position that I think is irreplaceable, and I think that early on people in their careers don't really understand it, but by the middle point / end, like later on, they're like, fuck, I really need that person. And by that time, they've also gone through a couple, so they understand like what they're really looking for. So I think like everything, it's a growth thing. I want to be respectful of everybody's time. I know we went a little bit over. We started a little bit late, so I think that's fine. But you guys have been really
Question.
We're going to get to the hat question. Okay, so let's just kick off with a couple questions. Lee, what's going on with the hat? Tell us about it.
I've had this hat since I was 8. It is not real raccoon, but I just think it's fun. And I watched Cuckoo, which is Andy Samberg has the same hat, so I like pulled it out of my thing and put it on, so I thought it was just fun. So this is my like Andy Samberg Cuckoo outfit. So there you go.
I love it.
Like I've had it for a long time. It's like I think it's just fun. Also, it's like I bought this. I just bought this new house. So I feel like I'm trying to like. I have a new house and I'm trying to remind myself of my childhood, and then it's exciting to be a child sometimes. So
I love it, and I think
raccoon hat.
I think I can also vouch that Lee is definitely one of the more stylish people I know.
I literally have like a dress on too.
I love it. The court cannot stop us. But yes, Lee's multiple, for those of you that don't know, Lee's multiple blacklist scripts always make themselves into a hat that he adorns as well. And we've been seen posing in pictures together because
this is the thing. Hollywood, to me, the most important thing is it's easy to forget that if it's not fun, I don't understand why people are doing this.
Totally.
Like, if you are not having a good time working in Hollywood, I would ask you to kindly leave.
Yeah.
Like, totally. Please leave. Like, you're not making it any more pleasant for anybody else. Please leave. Right? So I enjoy making it as enjoyable as
I think that is totally true. It's like the point is fun. The point is to have a good time. The point is to create art. The point is to do something cool that you really love. This shit's too hard otherwise. And I say that to everybody. And I'm sure everybody on this call feels the exact same way, All right. Is there another question that somebody wanted to answer, or do they want to jump on the fun train and talk about like the fun of the job and also the heartbreak? But I mean, there's both.
Well, are we picking these questions that we want to answer, sure. Or what?
Answer one or whatever. Yeah. One jumps out to you. We'll answer probably like 1, 2 more. Be out.
The one about jumping around, I think, is important because I think it's when clients leave or you break, it gets complicated. But I also think I think it's important for writers to kind of understand, like, if I'm talking to a writer and I'm like, oh yeah, were you previously like, oh yeah, I was with this manager and this manager and this manager. I'm like, okay, like, what's up? Like, well, it's like, so just understanding that, like, again, it's fine. But I would advise against it. Like, especially if you be like at fancy places, it's like, clearly there isn't them. At a certain point, maybe like if it's 1 or 2, but if it gets into like 3, it's like, well, this is the writer's issue now. Like now it's become like, this is not, there's now maybe a bigger, now I'm getting red flags, right? And I'm not gonna engage because like maybe there's a landmine here that other people have avoided too. So I think that's what I don't know. Other people want to answer that question differently, but that's how.
Yeah, I think. I would say it's like a marriage, right? Like if someone is married 10 times, like clearly, like commitment's not a big, a top priority for them. And yeah, I think, I mean, do your research. I mean, definitely, I think the advice is definitely don't sign with the first person that wants to sign you just because you're like, oh, I want a manager, therefore, and they want me like that jump on the first one. Like, do your research, meet more people, and have like, go with the right fit. And yeah, if there's a wrong fit, I mean, definitely a few of my clients have had previous agents that they had left, or other managers that they had worked with, and it didn't work out. But like, yeah, definitely once, one is definitely okay. Two, like maybe depending on how long it was. But yeah, once you get into 3+, it's kind of like, I'm going to I just know I'm going to put in time to this person, and they're probably going to leave me. And why do I want to invest all that sweat equity for not return?
Jason, I feel like I feel like this entire topic is like relationship, like advice. I'm like, oh my God, is that like, as a serial monogamist, is that my issue? Anyway, so less about me and my room. We'll sideline about that. Carmen, Zach, do you have a note on that one?
I mean, I just think if that's happened and you've jumped around for whatever reason and something. I mean, I've got a client who just got lost on a really big client list at one of the bigger management companies, and just didn't get the traction she was after and hoping for, and the style wasn't a fit. But she came to me with a great understanding of what didn't work out and why. It was deeply insightful, and so therefore it was compelling for me to take her on, because our fit was evident. It was clear. So I think that's it. But to say, as you said, Jasper, it's like you just human relationships have some sort of perspective on why it didn't work out, and that's going to matter or moving forward.
Totally.
I think it's really important to have good communication with whoever your reps are. So if you're thinking about jumping around, there are like reps are, we're human beings. We're not ladders. Don't jump from the ladder to the ladder to the ladder thinking that that's going to, elevate your career. If you have a problem or an issue, you should bring it to your reps first and say, I have an issue. We should talk about this so that we can come up with a plan. And you should be really, really honest, because we only take the information that we see. Sometimes, like, maybe we don't know everything that's happening. I did have an agent call me recently and said, hey, I have a client I'd like to send you who just decided to fire his whole team. He started someone new. He was at here, and here. And despite how good the client looked on paper, he checked all the boxes everyone would like to see. That was pretty jarring for me, because it said, we do a lot of work that we don't get paid for.
Totally.
Like, that's like a major, most of the work we do, we don't get paid for. There may be something that hits, and then that'll pay for everything. But we're taking a really big risk by saying we're going to spend a lot of time on you. So help us do that job. But if we feel like we're being used, we all know what that feels like. So
totally. I think that's super right. I mean, I've got basically two buckets of clients, and I'm sure this is not unique, but it's like folks that are on the newer, I got to break them side somehow. And then folks that have like already been broken and are kind of like, they are unhappy with their reps or something like that. They know what they're looking for at this point. But like, I really honor the fact that like some of these people have been with their reps previously for like 10 years. It's like, that's a bucket of time. I've also seen it where situations where it's like somebody new gets their first job, and they're like, oh, it's time to level up. And it's like, I've had business said to me, and I just go like, well, I've got way more lawyers than you. Like, I run a business. Like, you're a writer and a director, and I love you to pieces. But like, it's just saying business is not doing good business. Like, there's this weird thing that's kind of put out there that like agents and managers are like kind of interchangeable, and it's just not true. It's like, it really should be a friendship, and if it's not, like, the manager also probably knows, like, but I guess we've all been in relationships that ended and it wasn't our doing, you know. So
Yeah, one last just kind of.
Well, Jasper really wants to talk about his relationship.
Yeah, let's unpack
so,
this.
so maybe we should like dedicate a little more time.
Can we go back to cookbooks?
Wait, Lee, did you have something?
I always try to over communicate. Again, it's not a perfect system, right? And it's like, you know what? I can get aloof. I can go some. It's like, I don't know. It's just life is hard sometimes, right? And like sometimes you don't get to things as fast as you want, but sometimes it's like, yeah, what you're talking about the higher, like there's like it's like there's only so many hours a day, so so many things I can do, and sometimes you just don't get to that person, right? And sometimes that can be frustrating because I'm like, oh, I kind of get constantly put on the bottom of the thing, but it's like the write-ups never made me money. It's like I try to over like, well, I have to focus on what I need to do in a day, and like I can get to you when I get to you, and we'll set a call for a week from now, and we'll talk about it because that's just when I'm gonna. Because versus like, I want to give that person the time that they need, and I can schedule the 2 hours that we need at that time to do that versus like rushing things. But another anecdote, like when I Bubbles, which is one of my biggest things, like I was dealing with that. It was like the craziest shit, like Richard Love, all these crazy people. I kind of essentially told all my other clients, like the next month of my life, just don't even like kind of expect to hear from me. Pretty much. Like I am just totally like just for my overall business, I am tripling down on this one thing and spending every ounce of my energy on it. So and also understand that me doing that is going to help you in the long term. Because of all of this shit that I'm going to stir up here, it's going to help me and raise the entire profile of this entire thing. But there was one client that was like, no, you have to read my script. And I listened to was like, no. And he dropped me and I was like, bye. And then you know what? 3 weeks later was like, I'm so stupid I dropped you. I'm like, but done. Again, I was trying to over communicate, being like, I'm here to help you. I will read your screenplay. I'm not going to be on the phone for 12 hours a day and then I'm just not. I'm dealing with this crazy thing. Like, I'm just not going to, I can't give this the attention it needs right now, but hold on. And you know what? Then he regretted doing it. Like, but yeah, he had his own journey. And it's like, well, I have to look out for me first. I always have to look out for me first. And the thing that's going to be the thing that's going to help the entire pot. I have to think of the collective, not just individual things, right? Too. So
totally. Yeah. Well, does anybody have any ending note? Otherwise, we'll wrap it up. Any of the panelists? Carmen, you're not speaking to us.
Just quickly, just Alexandra's question that's just come in. Is there a period of working together before signing to get to know each other? I mean, I can't speak for everyone, but something that I think is worthwhile, it can be if there's working on a project together to begin with, if there happens to be something that I'm particularly drawn to and I just haven't had any experience working with this writer at all, and it hasn't come through a referral or a sort of deeply contextual relationship, then that can be a way to go, but that requires, I guess, a level of excitement about that project, and that's one way, but I wouldn't say there's sort of a standard process there. It's sort of something more to feel out, and it's balancing that time. Like, time really is money for reps because we're putting in so much up front. So that one's tricky. Well, in a perfect scenario, it would be to try and take something to market together, see how it goes. It just depends where the writer's at and what those materials are.
Totally. And I think, Carmen, what you mentioned just then is really important to double down on. I think, Zach, you brought this up, but we've all talked about it, is, I hear this sometimes out of newer writers where they're like, I'm done specking things. I don't want to spec anything, and I'm just like, cool. Well, I don't think you understand that our job is specking for you 24/7. And we don't own the material. You must, if we're talking about who's a riskier gambler, I would say managers I see at the poker table more than anybody.
Yeah, exactly.
We're all just excited kids, as believers going oh no, this is the one. Is there more of a science than that? It's Anyways, well, I really, really appreciate you guys jumping on today. It's been a totally lovely chat. Multiple times I felt like we could have gone on for hours about a certain topic. At certain points, I was like, we got to make a podcast about this kind of crap. Like, just sharing these stories is really great. And I think, obviously, helpful for everybody in the audience. So thank you all. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in as well. And catch you on the flip side.
Thanks, Jasper.
Jasper, later.
Bye, guys.
Right.